What's up, guys? This is Hitchagood, and today we have a somewhat somber subject to discuss, and that is the death of our beloved franchise, Battlefield. If you were like me, you were absolutely stoked for EA's love letter to the fans. For once, we would not only have a proper Battlefield that harkened back to the good old days of Battlefield 3 and 4, but now Call of Duty would actually have some competition and be forced to, just do better. In our capitalistic market, competition is a good thing. Activision would have to stop singularly focusing on just pumping out goofy-looking skins and microtransactions. They'd actually have to make a better game. But alas, the Battlefield community was completely let down as EA once again sold us a bill of goods. They lied to us about being months ahead of schedule and completely upended the foundation that made Battlefield great and turned it into a hero-focused game. Instead of feeling like you were one soldier on a battlefield, EA decided we must all feel extra special with players sporting their own set of skills and abilities among a selection of contrived characters born out of forced diversity, let's just be honest. And as a whole, this launch has been a large disappointment for the vast majority of the core community. Even last week, Lossy, a creator that blew up because of his reporting on 2042, announced he just can't produce content for it anymore. He's distancing himself. He has to go to other games that aren't sinking ships, which is very telling of your game. When creators that blew up because of your game are now distancing themselves from it, that's a red flag. But before we dive deeper, please remember that if you want to support your favorite all-American freedom-loving gamer, click the subscribe button below, like, and comment letting me know what you think of the current state of Battlefield 2042. But back to the video. Before we get started, I just wanted to say that as someone who fell in love with Battlefield 4 and Battlefield 1 and largely the franchise as a whole, I wanted this to succeed, like, so bad. I really wanted 2042 to do well. I wanted DICE to just land a solid sucker punch to Activision and Call of Duty, not only to prove to them that their adherence to money-grubbing mechanics such as skill-based matchmaking were an abject failure, but force innovation on both sides. Unfortunately, DICE and EA left us feeling more like you were the chosen one. So there's several reasons as to why I and countless others in the Battlefield community are having such a hard time enjoying this game. I even uninstalled it. It's not worth the computer space. There's really not much fun to be had here, even though I paid $90 for this thing and EA just threw a huge 33% discount on it. So anyways, let's go through those reasons one by one. We're going to bypass all the technical problems with the game as EA has fixed some number of these. It still feels like I'm playing a beta when I load in, but we're going to focus on the core mechanics. There's already no doubt that they misled the community about how ahead of schedule the production was. If you'd like kind of a play-by-play on that to see what really happened, I'll link a video in the description of Tom Henderson. He's the insider that we've all been listening to, insider leaker, and he kind of explains exactly what went on straight from the mouths of some of the former and current DICE developers. So there's a lot more details there, but we're just going to focus on the main mechanics of the game. So first off, one of my biggest gripes with this game is the total undermining of the foundations of what makes a Battlefield game great, and that is doing away with the class system. That was singularly Battlefield's niche. It's what separated it from the rest of the FPS shooters out there and made it exclusively unique to the franchise. In Battlefield 3, 4, and 1, and even 5, there wasn't a significantly strong meta, and that's because the class system prevented any particular gun from becoming god tier by effectively restricting access to it. Just like a real-life soldier, if you're part of a specific unit, only certain weapons are available or issued to you, so to speak. If you want to run against tanks and helicopters, well, you're not going to have the exact gun you want. You're going to have to practice with what the game allows you to use, which, guess what? That leads to extra game time of, learning some of these guns, what they can do, what they can't do, and which ones are best in each class. It's not just going on YouTube, finding out the meta, and then exclusively using the gun of the month that hasn't been nerfed yet. You had to explore each class, and it led to an experience that had a lot more depth to it. Now, EA has pretty much reduced this class system to nothing more than a name you can save one of 4 different loadouts under. They literally mean nothing. When it was first announced, I was like, okay, I'm open to this. It's an added mechanic, and I'm talking about the specialist system. Let's reserve judgment. But when I got into it, all you had were specialists. The classes are just gone. They're nowhere. They removed them. You can run whatever gun you want with whatever gadgets. You're the hero of the battlefield. even though nobody really requested that. You know, we want to play Battlefield where, you know, we're a standard soldier. We actually feel like we're on a battlefield. It's not Call of Duty, it's not Apex. We want to feel the experience of feeling the role of a soldier on a battlefield, not some super soldier hero. But EA was so caught up in following market trends and looking for ways to monetize their game, they decided to pretty much copy what everyone else was doing, and in doing so, they removed the very soul of the franchise. Not to mention that most of these skins and specialists just look plain bad. Goofy, even. They're trying to make each one so unique that pretty much nothing is unique, and I'd be perfectly fine with a Battlefield 4 level of customization as opposed to having to listen to all these painfully cringy quips after each game mode. They really do sound silly and almost kind of Fortnite-ish. Fortnite-ish? Yeah. But it's just sad. But in 2022, we realized that the casual player just wants to feel special and unique when the game's core community is really nothing of the sort. Unfortunately, this seems to be the foundation of 2042, and I don't see them ever changing it back. It's there, and it's a base you're going to have to work around from now on. That's what the game is, unfortunately. But secondly are the maps. It seemed that developers were just pushing player count so hard and left little else to focus on. It was just that number of 128 players that they just absolutely obsessed over. 128 players, 128 players. Look, our game has 128 players. Well, I don't really care. And since then, we found out the 64-player game modes are far better. They just flow better. And because we spent so much capital on pushing 128 players and creating maps to accommodate those players, we've come up with empty and barren maps. The technology isn't there to have the detailed and populated maps of past titles and also be able to, you know, have the space for 128 players. They just don't have any detail to them. They're not interesting. Go back to Battlefield 4, walk through a hotel or an apartment building and just look at it. Even the textures are better. It shows an environment that actually has some wear to it, but in Battlefield 2042, in a time that is supposedly ravaged by war and climate catastrophes, everything is oddly pristine and immaculate. I'm not sold on the story of it at all. And if you're going to completely do away with a single-player campaign and let your multiplayer take on the burden of world building and storytelling, you better understand that your maps do a whole lot to not only tell and explain that story, but sell it as well and make it believable. It's like there was this huge disconnect between the writers and the art designers here as there just doesn't seem to be much continuity between the story and the art design. You can look back at Battlefield 1, and when you load in, you honestly feel immersed in World War I. There's a completely different vibe when starting up that game that is honestly never felt with any other game. And that's not the case with 2042. It has no soul. It has no identity. It's a mix match of all the games out there that are making money with microtransactions and battle passes that it's not Battlefield anymore. It's just all these copied ideas for generating revenue of these other games. If I wanted to be a hero, I'd play Apex. I'd go play Call of Duty, and I do. But when I want to play Battlefield, I want to play Battlefield. And if EA is offering the same thing as these others, then why sink my time into it? Why waste and take up the disk space? It's just not worth it. So not only are these maps devoid of all detail, but also cover, which makes vehicles an absolute necessity for having a high score at the end of the match or turning the tides of battle for your team. They lean heavily in vehicle gameplay, which before playing this game I was really excited for, because I love driving, tanks. I love driving LAVs and filling that role in the battlefield. But now I realize that having such vehicle focused maps really just means you can't ever hardly get a tank. The only times I've been able to do so is by loading in before everyone else does and getting a tank at the beginning of a round, and never being able to get one for the entire rest of the round. Or if I did, I consider myself lucky. The rest of the time, you're going to have tons of players sitting in the respawn menu, spamming the vehicle of their choice, and it's just based on luck if you get to load into that vehicle. They're so in demand in this game style that it's very hard to actually play in one, especially among 128 players. So, if you look back to Battlefield 4, I'd often go back to the respawn menu, and maybe I'd say 25% of the time I'd see the vehicle I wanted just waiting for me to hop into. And that's because the gameplay was more balanced, and it wasn't completely necessary to have a tank or a vehicle to make a difference for your team. The gameplay utilized a plethora of different playstyles, which meant I got to play with vehicles much more often in these older titles. I don't think vehicles should be nerfed at all, though. I just want to make that extremely clear that vehicles should not be nerfed or changed. They should be feared. You should be feared as a tank or a helicopter on a battlefield. You know, if something pulls up, it needs to take your attention. What I want are them to redo the maps, add cover, add variety, add different segments to it that are much more populated and full of details so that they can accommodate a wider range of playstyles and more infantry gameplay, not just maps built for snipers and engineers. The third thing, this is big too, there's no scoreboard, and they're not even talking about putting one in. This is utterly insane. Why? And then I think that, yeah, it's 2022, so I feel like along with the censorship of the text chat, so no one gets offended, that this is just another example of wokeness that forever treats players with kid gloves, not wanting to foster hurt feelings by seeing themselves at the bottom of the scoreboard. The horror. Look, DICE, we want to know how we're doing. I want to know how I'm doing. I want to know how I'm performing. I want to know if I'm getting better doing this or getting worse doing something else. We want to work to get better at the game. If that incentive to get better and being able to track that incentive is taken away, I'm losing interest pretty fast. Just that's the way it is. And it's sad to say that the most fun I had in this game was in Portal, where we went back to the older games. It was actually a blast, to be honest. So you've introduced a new game, and the best thing about it is that you get to go back and play remastered versions of the old ones you created. It's not a good sign, guys. It's not a good sign at all. So one thing I think we're just going to have to come to terms with here is the fact that almost all the developers that built the timeless classics we all love, they're no longer working at DICE. They've moved on. They've gotten tired of EA stifling creativity, and they're gone. And EA has just totally lost interest in making players happy. They just want whatever benefits their bottom line the most. And unfortunately, the younger generation that never played these awesome games are totally oblivious to how good things used to be in this franchise. And they see another hero-based game and think, oh, this is okay, and they continue to spend money, never knowing the full potential, the what could be. So I remember many creators back in 2021, beginning of 2021, saying that after the blunder that was Genderfield 5, if EA DICE didn't knock it out of the park with this next Battlefield, that the franchise would be dead. So, is the franchise dead? Leave me a comment below and let me know what you think, but I tend to think so. I think Battlefield as an IP is dead. However, that doesn't mean we won't see another one in the future. I'm simply saying that the greats that were Bad Company, 3, 4, and 1, they're a thing of the past as far as EA goes. Now, there's still plenty of room for smaller IPs to adopt these classic, solid mechanics, and it seems like the devs making World War III right now are picking up on some of those. But the idea, the mechanics, the aura of the only in Battlefield moments that we all loved, they're not going to return among AAA titles. At least not anytime soon, and not under the direction of EA for sure. So yes, there will be more Battlefield games in the future, but I hate to say the things that make this franchise so great under DICE Studios are gone. But hey, that doesn't mean that you can't still enjoy the older games. It's not all bad news. Much to my delight and surprise, Battlefield 4 and 1 did not tank in player count because of 2042's release. As a matter of fact, 2042, because of how much it actually sucks, these games are seeing a resurgence in interest. In fact, if you're interested, I made some videos last year about revisiting Battlefield 4 and 1, and if you'd like some more updated videos that talk about Battlefield 4 and 1 in 2022, please let me know in the comment section below. If there's a demand for that, I'd love to go back and do another video on it. I love the Battlefield franchise, I really do, and I'm going to continue playing the older games, and hopefully because of 2042's failure, we'll see a nice long life for the older titles as fewer and fewer games employ the playstyles of real Battlefield games. Anyways, I want to make this rant kind of short and sweet, not jumping into every single little detail of this, but just hit the big points of why 2042, in my eyes, is a failure, and why I think the franchise and the ideas of this franchise are pretty much dead, at least for now, until they can figure out a way to monetize the old Battlefield system. I don't think it's coming back in AAA games, but we may see some of these things return with some of the indie developers. And I think a lot of attention from gamers is going to indie developers because they still have the thirst, the hunger to make good games. They're not controlled by, you know, big corporations like Activision or EA who only care about the bottom line. You know, some of these indie creators, they really do, they've got the freedom, the creativity, and the drive to make good games. But anyways, guys, that's enough for this rant. If you made it this far into this video, I want to tell you how much I appreciate you watching till the end. Please drop a like and subscribe to support your favorite all-American freedom-loving gamer. Hit you good. God bless, and happy gaming.